Hey you, yeah, you. Do you want $100 for absolutely nothing? Well, if you do, go follow me on Twitter. Oh, you bought the big house with the indoor pool? Great, now we can bring our kids over for a swim. No lady, you can't. I just bought a house. It has 5 bedrooms, an office, a large basement and an indoor pool. Apart from the usual, why do you need such a big house if you don't have children, I've also got the comment in the title. Most of my neighbors have kids, and many of them assume that I'm going to let their gremlins in so they can swim in my pool. And they have the gall to look offended when I tell them, no, the pool is for me, my boyfriend, my friends, and my dogs. It also seems to bother them that I keep my gate locked at all times when I'm home because our kids would love to play in your front yard. You have so much space. I've already installed security cameras, and I'm going to place cacti around the boundary wall. Must do all I can to fend off the entitlement invasion. Well, hey, short but snappy to start with, but I like this one a lot. There's quite an easy solution in my opinion. Just dig a moat around your house and fill it with lava. Moving on to our second story. You can't suspend my child. I will kick your butt. I worked in a daycare for 5 years. I managed one for 4 out of the 5. I was 18 years old when I first got into management role. I was bright-eyed and chipper and ready to change the world one aftercare program at a time. So during my time at the daycare, there was this little boy. I say little, but he was 11, that constantly didn't listen. I'm talking full-fledged would do things he knew he shouldn't. Didn't matter how many times I talked to him, didn't matter what I did, nothing ever worked. I tried working with this mum multiple times. It got to the point where my boss was just like, alright, they can't come back for the rest of the week. And then he'd push me in the room with them to drop the bomb. The mum and dad always had excuses for him. So in this particular issue, the kid ran away from his group, which I mean isn't that bad. The kicker is he hid in a secluded part of our building and played Angry Birds on his phone until I finally found him because he screamed. When asked why he left the area he was supposed to be in, he told me, I just didn't feel like listening. I don't have to. My parents told me they don't like you, so I don't like you either. I wasn't surprised and I was fine with this comment. I was not the biggest fan of them either. I of course had communication with my boss the whole time during this situation, and he had communication with the parents on what was going on. She told them we would have the consequence and paperwork ready when they came to pick the kids up. This is where the fun begins. Please keep in mind this isn't word for word, but you get it to be honest. The entitled mum storms into the room. I know where this is going. He isn't suspended. This is clearly your guys' fault. Actually, he indefinitely is for the next 3 days. Your child's sister is welcome to come back during these 3 days, but your son is unfortunately not able to join us. I tried to go into why and explain the safety issue and how we need him to understand that he has to stay with the group, but she was not having it. She screamed and at one point slammed her hand on the table. The son at one point looks at me and says, I told you she didn't like you. And the mum said, that's true, this is why. After blaming the group teacher for him running away, even after telling her what she said, she storms out of the building with her kids, and I think the situation is over. Lamau, wrong. It's about 30 minutes until closing when I get a call to the front where the kids get picked up. I walk up there and see the entitled dad standing there brooding in the lobby. Confused and bracing myself for more drama, I ask him how I can help him today.
Do you realise that you're suspending a Marine son? Why don't you take better care of my kid? Maybe if you did, he wouldn't be making bad choices.
Sir, look, I'm sorry that this has happened, but we have a parent and code of conduct handbook that both you and your students signed acknowledging the rules. The conversation continued, and as it continued, he got more and more mad. He began yelling, and my front desk attendant got nervous, bless her heart, and she immediately started texting the owner who had left for the day. I pulled the dad into the office because other parents were coming in. It was see-through, so my attendant had visuals on me and him, and he got really close to my face.
I'm a Marine. You're not going to suspend my son, and he will be here tomorrow.
Thank you for your service. I can't imagine the dedication to this country you have. However, that doesn't change the outcome of what happens today. The entitled dad responded like this. Now this is word for word because I was 100% shocked.
I'm going to kick your effing butt. I'm tired of you acting like a smug POS because my son doesn't follow the rules.
At this point, the dad is all up in my face. I laugh when I'm uncomfortable, so I was chuckling a lot, but other than that, I think I held myself well, but homie was jacked. The more he screamed, the harder it was for me not to laugh. So he continues to scream, and finally I just look at him and said I was about to call the police and that he can either leave right now or in handcuffs. He gave a whole rant about how he's a Marine and millennials are BS people who don't care about veterans, even though my whole family is vets. And then my boss walked in and took over. I left the room and had to sit down in the office for a bit. I held myself composed out there, but I didn't realize how shaken up I was until after this dude was not my issue anymore. My attendant told me that I was pretty cool and she was really impressed. I felt like a punk. Long story short, kid was suspended and he still would act up after that day. Parents literally started telling him they didn't care if he didn't listen in daycare so long as he listened in school. Apparently by the stories he'd tell, he didn't do that either. He would tell me he didn't like me, but it got to the point where I just counted down the days before he was too old to be in the program anymore. His sister was an angel, so I knew when he left it wouldn't be an issue anymore. Don't work daycare, ladies and gents. I have plenty of these stories. Well, to the entitled dad, I'd say it doesn't really matter if you are a Marine or not. If your kid's acting up in daycare, then yeah, that's an issue. Surely as a Marine, you expect 100% organization and dedication and listening, that sort of stuff. So if your kid isn't doing that, then you should be helping the problem as well. I don't know, I'm not sure it's your job to interfere in other people's work. Moving on to our final story. Now this is actually from the same person as the last story. You should have just let him see your dog. My wife and I lived in an apartment for a few years due to us having to save for a house. We lived in a cheaper apartment so we could really sock away money to put towards a house we both liked. Well, I was in my last semester of college and I was still working at the daycare I mentioned in my last story. There was a kid that went to the daycare that stayed in my apartment complex. This boy would always show up at our door. So the kid showed up periodically to see if I would play with him and his younger siblings. I literally never did because I figured if I did it one time, he would then expect it daily. So I started saying no, and then it got to the point where my wife would answer and say I wasn't home. He found out which car was mine. So he stayed away until he saw me walking my new dog at the time one day. He asked if he can pet it and I said yes. Then the unwanted visitations escalated. Hey Mr. Ghetto Duck, who is OP, let me see your puppy. Hey buddy, I've had a long day, I gotta go, maybe some other time. Well, that worked for a while until one Saturday in particular, he comes knocking at my door. I go to answer it and my dog was in the bedroom with my wife and they were napping. He asked if he could see the dog and I said no and that everyone but me was sleeping. This boy rolled his eyes and said, nah, I'm tired of not being able to see your dog. He ran into my apartment and ran straight for the bedroom. He wakes my wife up screaming, saying, where's the dog? I was in shock. This boy had really run up in my apartment. So my wife is trying to cover herself with a blanket, my dog is losing his mind, and the kid is trying to pet the dog. Well, my dog snapped at him. The kid took his shoe off and then threw it at my dog. So at this point, I'm realizing what is happening. So I walk over to the kid and pick him up like a baby in a cradle and walk him to the patio. I told him this wasn't okay and that he needs to stay away from my apartment. Well, cue his mum stomping up the stairs. Oh, heck no, is the only thing I hear before this woman comes up and gets directly in my face. She lets me explain nothing, just keeps screaming how I will not talk to a kid like that and she's going to tell the daycare and get me fired. When I finally got a chance to talk and explain what happened, this woman looked me dead in the eye and said, why didn't you just let him see the dog? This is so stupid. She then opens my apartment door and yells for my wife to bring out the stupid dog. Her son ran back in and this time my wife was ready and she picked him up and put him on the porch. I told her to lock the door and I stood out on the patio getting chewed out. My wife then called the police because it was getting out of hand. While I was trying to get this lady to get off my patio and take her child with her, the cop showed up. He wouldn't let my kid see his dog. He had to do something to see the dog, so he ran in. I told the officer I didn't want to press charges because it really didn't make sense to mess up a kid like that because he was being dumb. He was probably 8 if I remember correctly, and that was too much. Well, the mum called the daycare right after and pitched a fit, and I got called into a meeting with her and the kid. The mum fabricated this whole story how I said I was going to show my dog and that I was breaking the promise, and the kid got upset. When I got asked about my side, I just looked at the kid. Did I ever promise you that? No. The mum got so mad at the kid. She then claimed he had emotional trauma from the situation and asked for a free month of tuition. She didn't get it. After that day, I told my boss that I'm putting in my 2 weeks notice and he would need to start training my assistant manager to take over. Oh my goodness, so in this guy's last post, he warned everyone else not to work in daycare, and at the end of this post, he's actually retiring himself. I tell you what, daycare, yeah, it may be rewarding, but it sounds very, very tough as well. Anyway, that is the end of this video. I really hope you guys have enjoyed it. If you did, like, subscribe, and click the video on screen. With that being said, I will see you all tomorrow with some more Reddit content.